everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Misericorde, the game that freaks me out. Well, this time we're gonna go straight into what I believe is the very first day the Anchoress is let out of her cell. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. The next morning, I woke up feeling worse than if I hadn't slept at all. The aches may have subsided somewhat, but pain that had afflicted my head had merely reduced to a low-level buzz that made every thought take twice as long to finish. I meekly slid out of my bed and attempted to wash myself with water from the bucket, although I had wasted most of it scrubbing up the bile the previous night. I went to toss the excess out the window so I could ask for it to be refilled later. Oh, I thought that was like how do you say it? Not a coffin, but like a gravestone? I could still see my copy of Matthew on the ground beneath the window. An embarrassing reminder of last night's behavior. Halfway through tossing the water out, I remembered the horrible apparition I'd seen outside the night before. You know what? Given that it's a game that's set in England, why not have British spelling? Not in this sentence, but the one before. Oh god, that scared me! That woke me up. I don't want to make eye contact with it. I turned away from the window as quickly as I had the night before, even though there was nothing to see out there in the light of day. I simply didn't want to think about it anymore. Nervously, I slipped on my habit, flipped on my wimple, put on my cowl. The superior had told me that somebody, Katherine, would come to collect me before the morning service. Morning service? I had forgotten Martins? Are you decent in there? Yes. Good. Just a moment. God, which key was it? Well, look at you. She immediately reached out and yanked on my cowl. Why did she yank on me? Adjusting it to suit her liking. You look awful. This won't do. Superior would have my head. I looked up at her, bewildered. Sorry, poor taste. She licked her thumb before pressing it against my forehead and tucking an unruly cowlick under my wimple. I bristled instinctively and pulled away. I was not particularly pleased that my first physical contact in over 20 years was this. Woman rubbing a wet digit across my temple. Even I would feel quite annoyed by this. Hey! I'm just trying to make you presentable. For heaven's sake, I was busy all night and still managed to look my best today. She grabbed my cheeks and peered into my eyes, looking simultaneously deep in thought and maddeningly aloof. After hmming and hawing for a moment, she licked another finger and tucked in the rest of the hair sticking out from my wimple quite rudely. Then, after squeezing and stretching my cheeks a little, she gave them a light frosty slap. I guess you could say she's a person that is very aware of how she comes across to others, or at least through her outward appearance. Apparently satisfied, she clapped me on the shoulders and patted down my robe to straighten it. That'll have to do. We're gonna have to work on your face, though. It's absolutely colorless. You hit me. It gets the blood flowing, my dear. I knew you were going to be a mess, but I wasn't expecting things to be this bad. This was bewildering. You're Katherine, right? The one and only. And your name is? Hedwig. Oh, now we have a name to go with the Anchoress. Adorable. Now let's get along. The last thing I need is a talking to from the superior. She took a moment to admire her handiwork, eyeing me up and down. And with that, she turned on her heel and began to stride down the hallway. I couldn't follow her. I had never left the cell. I stood up from the threshold. I felt as though I was rocking back and forth on the deck of a ship. I closed my eyes for a moment, perhaps hoping that I'd open them and be back where I was just a few weeks ago. Sheltered, sealed, and content. Are you coming? I savored a few precious last seconds. Yes. I'm ready now. Off we go then. Oh. So I would assume this is like a proper chapter break. Kinda creepy though. Oh, thanks for flying about. I never seen the hallway of outside my cell before. Oh, they give you the location. Barrow Abbey, upstairs hall. It's useful to have this considering how everything is in black and white. It was quite long and Katherine was walking briskly towards the end. We're a way to go yet, I'm afraid. Right here, if you please. We passed a set of windows with a little statue of the Madonna and child nestled between them. We took another turn after that, into a hall equally as long as the one my cell was located in. I caught the briefest glimpse of the cloister out of the window. Up ahead are the dorms where the rest of us live. And the Misericorde on the right, just before those. I know they gave the definitions for Misericorde, but I cannot remember them. No, actually I can't remember anything. Then the door next to that is the library. Left at the stairs just before the dorms. There's a good girl. Oh. My god. I puffed up a little. I know how to use stairs. Thank you very much. And stop cursing, that's thrice now, I've counted. Why is Hedwig in lowercase letters with the H, but Katherine's with a uppercase with the K? Go on then, after you. I gingerly put one foot on the first step down. Very good. Oh, she's totally patronizing me right now. See? And Hedwig is falling into the trap. One more. I began to descend the staircase very slowly. I instinctively held my hands out for balance until I felt Katherine firmly gripping them and planting them to my sides. Why? You just walk down them normally. No! This really is precious. I'll race you to the bottom. But she had already casually strolled down to the landing. She pointed to the staircase that descended the other way as I wobbled my way down to her. There's more this way, just so you know. You are being perfectly horrible. Aren't I just? So she's the teasing kind, huh? Hurry up, you've got places to be and people to meet. We came to a foyer with a door leading out into the cloister. I still don't know what a cloister is. Maybe I need to go and read up on the architecture of an abbey or a monastery. The sunlight creeping in was simultaneously daunting and enticing. It's a good thing we don't get much heat here. Your skin looks like it might cook in the sun. She ushered me through the door, not allowing me the same moment I had taken leaving the threshold of my cell. The cloister was a rectangle of grass surrounded by stone arches. Passages ran around the grass, each leading to a part of the convent I hadn't been to yet. The sun glinted off of what appeared to be a metal crucifix in the middle of the lawn. Oh, I can see it. Although, do you happen to know if this abbey is built according to St. Gal's plan? I'm just curious about how this place is laid out. What, pray tell, is St. Gal's plan? You know, the standard layout for abbeys? I thought all Benedictine monasteries followed it. They might. I wouldn't know. And, well, I thought that door would be taking us out into the east, but we're facing south. How on earth do you know that? Have you got a compass hidden somewhere in your frock? Do I? No, it's easy. The sun rises in the east, so that's over there. I pointed left, where I could see the sun's rays creeping over the walls of the cloister. I wasn't aware you'd ever seen the sunrise. So, ahead of us from this door would be south. Normally, the chapel would be in the northern half of the monastery. Or rather, the tower would face north. And the oblates would lie in the southwest. Goodness! You must have had some very interesting books to read in that cell of yours. Of course. This abbey could have just been built around a Roman plan. That would follow, considering we're Catholics. I ignored this. Fascinating. I'm sure it is to someone. Katherine looked at me, clearly amused by my interest in the layout of a building. I felt as though I had made a fool of myself despite correctly observing something. That was a first. It's curious, right, how, even though you are right, social norms dictate that you have to behave in a certain manner. And what Hedwig here is doing is going against that social norm. And that's why we feel like something is wrong. It's so interesting. I didn't have much of a chance to feel sorry for myself before I was scared witless by a voice right behind me. As far as I know, the building was supposed to follow the plan of St. Gal, but the builders got a little turnaround in a storm. I could have jumped all the way out of my habit then and there. I wheeled around with a yelp. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Sister Margaret. I take it you're the Anchoress everyone's been whispering about? That's her. Yes, my name's Hedwig. And well, not anymore. I mean, my name is still Hedwig, but I'm not an Anchoress anymore. Obviously. Isn't she precious? It's nice to meet you. A word of advice. You can still go back to your cell. Why is she so mean? We can tell the soup you weren't feeling well. How did she... Or maybe she was looking out for me. Oh no, I feel fine. Why would I... Margaret turned her gaze to Katherine, as if to deliver some long-anticipated bad news. She's fixed the portative? Lots of new words here. Oh, has she now? God, maybe I'll tell her I'm sick today. Stop! Cursing! And, what's a portative? Margaret made a little wiggling gesture with her fingers. A little organ. Which means we'll be singing. More to the point, it means the superior will be singing. I should quite like to hear some liturgical songs, actually. Oh, liturgical, that's a word for it. It'll certainly make you think about God. It'll make you pray for him to smite the damned organ, that's for certain. Everyone seems to hate the superior singing. Is that what we're going with? I didn't think we decided. We can get our story straight later then. Her words belied a mischievous sense of humor that I would never have expected given her stoic expression. True. Just as soon as I thought this, however, a little smile crept across her face. Pleasant meeting you. She glided away just as silently as she had arrived. Well, hurry up. If we meet many more sisters on the way, we'll never get there. We continued along the path around the cloister towards the chapel. Two women were huddled close to each other outside the large wooden door, speaking in hushed tones. Katherine leaned down to whisper in my ear. The mousy one is Eustace. She's quite smart and a bit bossy. You two should get along swimmingly. That's kind of a jab. The other is Darcy, who... Well, Darcy's very special. Darcy, are you sure you'd be going to be able to sit through the service without doing... anything? Oh, she's already holding something, like a potion or, well, something. You keep giggling, it's very distracting. Oh, that's so cute. Weehee. Oh, she's adorable. Probably because of all the stuff I drank before we came here. Oh, she doesn't even capitalize her words. That's interesting. That much I gathered. Why would you drink anything you've cooked up before service? I thought it might be funny. It might be a little funny. That's right. The pair noticed Katherine and I walking past. Darcy gave me a strange little wave where she wiggled each finger individually. Eustace, though, she gave me a strange look that I couldn't quite place, but I didn't appreciate. Was I just fresh out of my cell and unable to comprehend any expressions subtler than Katherine's, or did Eustace seem to dislike me intensely? Oh, I had plowed directly into someone walking past Eustace and Darcy. In my attempt to keep myself righted, I grabbed a handful of cloak. I tumbled to the floor, nearly dragging the mysterious person with me. Thank God I let go on the way down. I looked up at the woman I collided with and realized something. This was what intense dislike looked like. I'm terribly sorry. Angela. I see you've met our newest oblate. Katherine shot me a little smirk as I pulled myself off the ground. This is Sister Hedwig. She's still finding her footing. As you can see, oh, she really likes to tease. I'm really very sorry. Angela said nothing to me. She simply looked me up and down quickly before turning to Katherine. Your door is still broken. Oh, is it now? You told me you would see to getting it fixed 2 weeks ago. Yes, well, I'm a busy woman, Angela. Not too busy to be spending most of your evenings in the Misericorde, I've noticed. Katherine took a step closer to Angela. She was barely 1 inch taller, but she was making quite the effort to make it seem like there were 10 between them. Find anything else interesting in my room, Angie? Or were you just testing the door? Just the same. Musk, as always. I didn't even have to check inside. It wafted out of the door on its own when I tested the hinges. So diligent. And here I was thinking Darcy's experiments might be more odorous than anything I might hide. Darcy's experiments aren't alive. Oh goodness, what does she even mean? Oh, although I might have an inkling, still. She idly watched Eustace and Darcy walking past her into the chapel, along with Margaret and several other people I didn't recognize. Yet. As always, my dear sweet Angela. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sure. She shot me another icy look before turning on her heel to head into the chapel. Time for service. Katherine made a high-pitched little noise that sounded like a mocking sneeze. Angela froze for a moment, but did not turn around before continuing into the hall. Angela is convinced I'm keeping a cat in my room. Oh, I see. She's been bothering me about it for months. Are you? Of course not. They're filthy little things. How interesting. Inside the chapel, everyone was already sitting in pews, all except the superior who I could make out standing at the altar near the back. She did indeed have a small device in front of her that I'd never seen before. Given the apprehensive looks on the other sisters' faces, I could guess that it was a dreaded portative organ. She noticed me walking in with Katherine and gave me an appreciative little curl of lip just barely legible from far away. When she spoke, her voice echoed around the chapel. It made me jump. Greetings, Sister Hedwig. I would like everyone to give her a warm welcome. A murmur of dullest enthusiasm rumbled through the chapel. I gave a little bow of the head, unsure of how to properly respond. Thank you. Come up here if you please. I'd like to introduce you properly. She glared at the gathered nuns. To the congregation. I gingerly stepped forward and walked up to the altar. Every footstep echoed around the large room, and I could feel everyone's stares boring into my back. When I reached the superior, she gave me an encouraging smile. She acts so much like a teacher, in a good way. I turned around to face my adoring public, who mostly looked like they wouldn't mind if I were to drop dead in front of them. All save for Darcy. Darcy is so cute here. Anyway, who was looking straight past me with a serene expression. Hello? There was a collective grunt. It felt like one older woman with an eye patch sitting near the back was watching me with particular interest. She was smiling, but she said nothing. There was an awkward pause. Hello? Shh. Oh, sorry. Darcy stuck a hand out and started waving silently, before Eustace grabbed it and tucked it back down at her side. The superior gave me a little nudge. Well, it's lovely to meet everyone. Or rather, the people I've met so far. Katherine, Margaret, Angela, and I walked past Darcy and Eustace, so we didn't really meet, but you seem very nice. Not that Katherine and Margaret aren't nice. And I also don't mean the rest of you won't be lovely to meet. When I can. Oh, goodness. If you want to. I suppose I'm meeting you all right now. But, personally, you know. Oh, goodness, that sounds strange. At this point, I wouldn't have minded dropping dead in front of everyone either. But I couldn't stop there. Well, I suppose the best way to get to know people is through prayer. Not that I've ever prayed with anyone, but that's what I've read. Wherever two or more are gathered, and so on. I've prayed alone many times, though. And really, I suppose I've never actually been alone. What? Because I was here, and there were so many of you here, all along. Oh, it's so embarrassing to be doing this little introduction. Ooh, I feel bad. And you've all been praying as well. I'm not sure about Darcy there, though. So, a lot more than two are gathered here. Not just in the chapel. I mean, but in the abbey, generally. Oh, and you've all probably spoken with me before. Or maybe not at all. Maybe just some. I may have offered all of you spiritual advice through the hedgehog before. Not that I can tell who is on the other side of that. By the way, your deepest questions have always been safe with me. So I'll never be able to tell anyone anything embarrassing. Not to imply that anyone has asked me anything embarrassing. And I hope my advice has helped all of you. Or however many of you I ever offered it to. Oh no, stop talking. And if you were ever wondering who it was giving it to you, no, Hedwig. It was me. Here I am. For some reason that eludes me to this day, felt it might be best to end with a little flourish. Ta-da! It's cute though. I'm your new chronicler. Silence. Dreadful, dreadful silence. Finally, Darcy raised her hand. Yes? What's a hedgehog? It's the funny little window next to her door. You're supposed to talk through it. Oh, right. I buried my teeth in as wide a smile I could manage to the rest of the sisters. I got no response at all, save for another wave from Darcy and a smirk from Katherine. I looked up at the superior for some sort of guidance. Any help at all, she just smiled at me and pushed my back gently, urging me to head back to the pews. Hedwig's situation is rather unique, so we all have a responsibility to look out for her and offer her help with the day-to-day around the convent. I want everyone to be extra helpful and forgiving towards her. And I want no sort of hazing or pranking. They haze in a convent as well? By the by, Sister Flora, I will be speaking with you after Prime concludes today. Whatever. Flora was the young woman with the pimply face then. Not wanting to cause a fuss, I walked past the last occupied pew to sit in an empty row in the back on the opposite side of the aisle to everyone else. Oh no, why such an obvious distance between you and the others? Now the creed, if you please. And then we will continue with the usual psalmody before concluding with a hymn. And yes, that means singing. And yes, that means all of you, including Katherine. Katherine. Or Katherine the First? There was an awkward pause before everyone lurched into the Athanasian Creed at the superior's urging. I'm sorry, this is impossible for me to read. Latin, I suppose. I would attempt to read it, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna butcher it completely. Oh. I vomited black bile all over the flagstone floor. What? What happened? Oh, it's so creepy. Maybe I'll try to read out whenever someone is talking in dialogue, even if I can't pronounce it. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? My name's Moira. This is an impolite manner of introduction, but say something if you can hear me. I opened my eyes and groaned. I was lying on the floor between the pews, surrounded by a semicircle of concerned sisters. The woman who had been sitting near the front of the pews was crouched next to me. Her hand was resting on my shoulder to prop me upright slightly. Sorry. A grim expression melted away as I began to speak. Don't dare apologize. You had us worried half to death there. She spoke in a lilting accent I couldn't quite place. The superior pushed through the throng of nuns at the moment, prompting the friendly woman to pop back up to her standing height with a little bounce. She's going to be just fine. I think she's just a tad enervated. All of this might have been a bit much for her humors, I'm afraid. I see. I did warn her that jumping into things straight away might be too much. I opened my mouth to object to this out-and-out lie, but the superior gave me a piercing look. My silence assured, she turned to the friendly-faced woman. Moira? I'd like you to take her to the dormitory to rest up for a little while in the room that's been prepared for her. If she's feeling up to it, she can rejoin us for luncheon later. Of course. She leaned down to offer a hand to me, which I took. I staggered back to my feet, hiding my gaze from the crowd. What a disaster this has been so far. I took a deep breath and caught just a hint of the foul stench of bile. My baffling speech, falling asleep during service, and throwing up in front of everyone. Even though these were people I was meant to suspect, I felt as though I'd been humiliated in front of a powerful royalty. Surely there'd be no climbing back from this. So... yes, well... I suppose that means the office of Prime is concluded. There was an approving murmur from everyone. Amen. The murmur morphed into a half-hearted amen. Why is it that all the sisters in this abbey are, kind of odd? As everyone began to shuffle outside, Moira kindly offered me her shoulder for balance. Moira seems very nice, but it's also the nicest people that you want to suspect first. You'd better join us for lunch. You barely weigh a thing. It had started to rain over the course of service. As we passed the threshold of the chapel side doors back into the cloister, I could see Margaret and Katherine huddled together, talking somewhat conspirationally. Conspiratorially? I'm sorry. Margaret noticed me and raised her eyebrows, prompting Katherine to turn to face me. Do feel better soon, dear. It's been a pleasure so far. And no hymns. Amen is right, eh? Ah, Sister Margaret. Since we've let out a little early, surely you wouldn't mind cleaning up our newcomers' mess? I believe there's a mop and bucket in the workshop. Yes, soup. Oh, do they call the superior soup? And Katherine, who is trying to sneak away? I'm sure Margaret would appreciate some help. Yes, of course. Moira tugged on my sleeve gently. Come on then. Let's get you some rest. We walked back through the cloister and through the doorway where I'd made a fool of myself in front of Katherine. Everyone always says that the monastic life is so simple, but I can imagine it being quite a shock coming from what you're used to. Yes, I suppose so. She squeezed my arm gently. Everyone also says first impressions are everything, but I have a good feeling you'll nail your second one, eh? All I could do was groan. I liked your little speech, though. It's not often we get newcomers. Adela was the last one before you. Adela? And that was nearly a year ago, if I remember right. Adela? Oh goodness, how silly of me. And we just established you haven't had a chance to meet everything yet, poor thing. Lots on my mind. I was hoping to introduce myself to everyone properly after Prime, but we'll get you rested up so you can catch up with everyone later, eh? I didn't have the energy to tell her that I have been about to say, no, I'd rather crawl into a hole and disappear after, but... I don't know whether it was because I fully grasped it the first go-around, or if my current state was so weak generally that Moira wouldn't have noticed, but I made it up the stairs this direction without comment. Here we are. This is where all of us sleep. Minus the superior, of course. We? We made a room for you already. Oh, accident. She swung open one of the wooden doors. A small, meticulously cleaned dorm room awaited. It had a similar straw mattress on one side, a little window, and an empty bookshelf next to a little reading desk. It was much smaller than the cell I had spent my life in. Oh, it's smaller? And here I was thinking it would be bigger. You could probably fit 2 people in here comfortably for a chat. 3 if one didn't mind sitting on the bed. Well, I suppose you're probably familiar with all that. It's not much, but mostly we just sleep in these. Tugging my arm again, she led me over to the mattress and urged me to sit. You're a mite pallid still. A nap before lunch should do you some good. What about Thurs? Or Sept? Oh, and I slept through Martin's last night. Now don't you dare worry yourself about something as silly as the hours. You're not used to moving and talking and, well, living so much. You need some rest. But prayer... Oh, for Pete's sake, don't be silly. I'm sure he would understand. I didn't have the energy to argue, but I knew all too well that God does not look kindly to those who would take advantage of his kindness. Prayer is a privilege, after all. Do you have a fresh frock, by the way? I could get it from your cell if you'd like. Oh, no, actually. Just this one. Someone would come and collect it to be washed every few days. Never mind then. Give it to me and I'll have it washed. Give it? I can turn around if you like. Nothing I haven't seen before, though. She made a show of spinning around before I could argue. So I gingerly undid my habit, stepping out of it and collecting it together in a rumply little pile. I crawled into the bed, naked apart from my coif, which I let affix to keep my head warm. All yours, I suppose. Ha! I'll have a bath drawn for you as well. You really don't have to. You're not my chambermaid. She stroked my forehead before bending down to scoop out my clothes. She is really attentive. And under normal circumstances, I would say she's a really nice person to be around. But now everything is just setting off red flags in my head. Every little action. I flinched at the sensation. While it was a friendlier gesture than Katherine's thumb assault, it was no less alien. Nonsense. It's what we're meant to do around here. For each other and for any visitors in need of aid. Well, thank you. She was right, of course. In my delirium, I had forgotten the worldly purpose of monasticism. I've been shut in myself for so long, so focused on myself. I completely ignored what it was the Abbey was here for in the first place. Don't mention it. Do you get many travelers here? People in need? I must admit that I don't actually know quite where we are exactly. She sat down on the end of the bed. Not many. We're quite isolated out here. Out here? The closest village is quite a trek, I'm afraid. We get visitors occasionally and supplies get sent to us fairly regularly, but we have to be a little self-sufficient. Where are we, exactly? The nearest village is called Limbarrow, but we're on top of a hill quite away from here. Limbarrow? Oh, have you heard of it? It is rather a bit of a hamlet, so I wouldn't be shocked if you hadn't. I have to confess, I don't know many English place names at all besides, well, London. Limbarrow, though. Sounds nice. It certainly rolls off the tongue. It didn't always. I hear the folk whittled it down from Lindisbarrow. Accents are funny like that. Have you ever been to London? Never. The superior came and brought me news about London a few times, that's all. Clerical things, church business I never really understood. Ah, I see. How strange it must be to you right now. No need to tell me twice. Ah, I'm sorry. I promise not to gawk any longer. No, it's alright. I wasn't offended. You're right. It is very strange to live one way until one day you're suddenly forced to start living what feels like the absolute opposite way. So many of them laughing like that. Yes. I'm just very taken with the idea that the way I live is the opposite of the way you lived until today. That's very interesting. It's my turn to apologize then. Not at all. It's a perspective I never considered. I suppose to the rest of the world, us nuns must seem very secluded and rigid. I've certainly felt that way sometimes. But you lived all by yourself in that little room all these years, with even stricter rules, I'd imagine. Very strict, which is how I described monastic life generally. But there was someone living very differently right under my nose. She paused for a moment. I noticed a tear rolling down her cheek. Must be Katherine with a C. Moira? Oh, it's just... This was her room. Katherine? She nodded, sniffling. Oh no. It's been so hard. It might have seemed like everything was normal at Prime, but I promise you, things have been very, very difficult with her gone. Sometimes it feels like most of them are trying to act like she never existed. I suppose I can't blame them, but it feels so wrong. She could have been there today, a day like any other. She would have really liked you, I think. Not that, you wouldn't even be here if not for... That would you? I didn't know what to say. Oh, listen to me rambling. It's not your fault. What was she like? She was very intelligent, intimidatingly so, and she wasn't afraid to show off to other people. Yes. Oh no, I'm just imagining. I can picture her, almost. Why doesn't she want to tell it to her? She left a strong impression on everyone she met, myself included. She was very good at everything she tried. I think that upset some people, honestly. Now that's a motive. She was a prodigy through and through. More than just being the chronicler? Well, the nice thing about history is that it happens rather slowly. She had plenty of time for other pursuits, especially with how things are around here. I don't see why that would upset anyone. I wouldn't dare say for certain that she upset any of the others specifically. It's just a sense I've gotten in retrospect, perhaps. I nodded. Precious as I held them, my conversations with Katherine through the hydroscope had a certain friction that I could imagine being amplified over years of talking to a person. I just don't understand why they'd be so sure that poor boy did it. She gave me a weak smile. You might have been able to rest up in the hospitalum if not for him. It's a wee bit nicer than the dorms, I have to say. You don't think he killed her? I don't know. Okay, from this conversation alone, it seems like Moira is expecting that Hedwig already knows of the murders. And, well, maybe she's trying to suss her out, I don't know. Should Hedwig pretend that she doesn't know of a murder? I don't know either. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's less of a suspicion and more just... It's hard for me to reckon with purest, random evil. Katherine was so good, wise and kind. For a lad to just murder her on a lark, I can't accept that. He'd have to have a reason, surely. Otherwise, the world is a much darker place than I believed. It's certainly a much dimmer place without Katherine. But she's crying so hard. I can't really bring myself to suspect her. We sat in silence for a moment. I didn't dare rebuke Moira, nor did I have the energy. But as well as empathy, frustration was bubbling inside of me. I could fix these misconceptions. Evil is everywhere. Demons are everywhere. The Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Genesis. Basic. Elementary. The very foundation of our faith. A godless man could kill someone as wonderful as Katherine without a second thought. It became clear to me there and then. The lackadaisical and selfish attitude surrounding crime, this disbelief in evil. Something was very wrong here. Even Katherine's questions to me had bordered on blasphemous. These women were lost. Lost! Lost! My eyes snapped open. For a brief moment, I felt like I was spinning. It was like I had only just regained control of my head. My throat tightened, and I made the tiniest little retch, although thankfully nothing came out. Oh dear, are you sleepy? Hee. How rude of me to spring all of this on you now, after badgering you about needing to relax. This is a dorm, not a place of confession. No, rude of me to drift off like that. You have my deepest sympathies. Moira stood up, my clothes still bundled in her arms. I'm going to go and make sure these get washed for you, so you can get some sleep. And I'll send someone to collect you to show you where the baths are. There's some fresh nightclothes under the bed. She made a few strides to the door, then turned around one more time. And I'll ask Darcy for some mint. Good for an upset stomach. And for breath. She gave me an impish little grin. Well, you said it, not me. I must have looked mortified because she immediately became apologetic again. Oh, don't take that the wrong way. It's not your fault you've been sick. It's alright. Thank you again for everything. She closed the door gently, smiling warmly. I was left alone with my thoughts again. I must admit that I had been feeling pleasantly pampered for a moment before the mint comment. Oh, and a bath? Was I really so disgusting? Of course I was. I was a complete mess. Unclean, irritating, always saying the wrong things. Disrupting prime, expelling foul bile everywhere I went. What a mess. Oh. Finally, I got some real rest. I was simply too tired to rehash the embarrassment I had incurred over the course of the morning for a fifth or sixth time, and sleep finally took me. Oh, looking up at the ceiling. Hello? Hello? I'm awake. Just a minute. I stepped out of bed and hastily made it back up as quickly as I could. Dropping to my knees, I looked underneath the wooden frame for night clothes Moira had mentioned. They weren't hard to find. It was spotless under the bed save for a neatly folded gown. I retrieved it and slipped it over my head. It was a little big for me, but it did the trick. "Are you decent?" "I'm coming." Sorry, just had to find a nightgown." I opened the door to greet her. She had a pleasant expression on her face and looked slightly more together than when I saw her in the chapel. She had droopy eyelids and a serene aura about her, except for the fact that she was dripping wet. "Moira asked me to bring you some mint, so I brought you some. Are you feeling better?" "Yes, actually. Quite a bit better. Darcy had put a few leaves of mint into her mouth and was chewing somewhat rapidly. "Don't worry, I brought plenty. I love the stuff. Grow it myself." Do you really?" "Yes." She fluttered her eyelashes and held out her hand, proudly showing off a large pouch full of leaves. "I grow lots of things. Mint is definitely one of my favorites, though. Did you know it's really called mentha?" "No, I didn't know that." She offered the bag up to me, and I reached inside to grab a few leaves. I placed them in my mouth tentatively, but was pleasantly surprised almost immediately. Oh, that is nice." "That's right. You really grow this yourself?" "It's wonderful." "Thank you for saying so, my friend. I just wish you hadn't gone and gotten yourself soaked in the process of getting it for me." "You didn't have to do that on my behalf. I don't think she got herself soaked for it." "Oh no, this isn't because of the mint." "Is it not?" "No." "Oh. Anyway, bath time." She spun around on her heel and began shuffling away towards the hall. "Wait, is there no lock on this door?" "Nope. We all trust each other here. Just make sure to knock. You don't want to walk in on Moira appellating." "I see." "That was embarrassing. The first time anyway. Third time it started being a bit funny, I suppose." "I suppose I didn't have any possessions that needed to be kept away from prying eyes or fingers. I was just used to locks." Darcy moved quicker than I would have expected. You could scarcely see her legs moving underneath her habit. She seemed to glide wherever she went, bobbing up and down ever so slightly. I followed, still feeling a touch indisposed. I didn't even know my way around the Abbey. To be walking around in a breezy nightgown felt wrong, perhaps even disrespectful. I tried to make some conversation to distract myself. "This is a very nice abbey." "It's big and cold and probably haunted." "What?" "Well, actually, that's not true. It gets a little hot in the summer when the sun hits the cloister. And you stand in the middle of the cloister." "What do you mean, haunted?" "Probably haunted. There's no such thing as ghosts." "What makes you feel like the convent is probably haunted?" "Well, there are a lot of weird noises at night or when I'm walking around alone, and things move around on their own sometimes. And also, I think most buildings just get a higher chance of being haunted the older they are. And these buildings are very old." "Well, I wouldn't worry about that. There really is no such thing as ghosts." I said this more to comfort myself than her, truth be told. All I could think about was a strange figure I'd seen from my window the night before. Please, I don't want to see that figure anymore. We took the stairs Katherine had led me down earlier. Then we walked past the door to the cloister to a web of hallways I hadn't seen yet. "That would be a shame. It would be nice to meet Katherine's ghost." Her placid expression didn't change, but I could sense a hint of sadness in her voice. Not wanting to press further, I quickly changed the subject. So, where are the baths? Not far from the kitchens. So we can make the water hot. Ah, how pleasant. It's nice. It's worth making the trips from the well, in my opinion. From the well? Does the kitchen not have a faucet? Oh, it does, but we aren't using it at the moment. Really? Why? Why not? Well, it isn't really working. I feel like that's a little hint. If the faucet isn't working, what caused it not to work? What could it be used for? As we stepped out into the rain, we could just collect the rainwater and boil them, maybe. I suddenly realized why she was soaked through. Oh, I really hope you didn't trudge back and forth in the rain just for my bath water. I did. But it's okay, I like the rain. I was currently struggling to not slip on the wet stone path in my wooden sandals, and couldn't for the life of me understand what Darcy was talking about. Watch your step. At least promise me you'll go and warm yourself up after this. Oh, I will. I've got to go help in the kitchen anyway, and it gets hot in there. She led me into a room with a large window with a wooden tub in the middle. It was certainly not originally a bathing room. The whole thing looked rather makeshift. There was a habit and frock folded in a neat little pile not far away. And here we are. Enjoy, my liege. Oh, she's funny. I didn't know what to make of that. I turned around to see if she looked annoyed or upset. But she had the same pleasant expression as ever on her face. If there's anything else I can get you, just shout. I will probably hear it from the kitchen. Well, thank you. Bye! Darcy fluttered her eyelashes and broadened her grin before spinning around to scoot back outside. Into the rain, closing the door behind her gently. Feeling miserable once more, I shrugged off the nightgown and removed my veil and strolled over to the tub. The water was quite warm, and some pleasant-smelling leaves were floating around on the surface. I took a good long look at myself reflected in the water. Horrible. I was pale and small, but any movement of my torso revealed ugly creases of flesh that made me wince. My nose was bent. I had spindly fingers. My eyes were dull and had bags underneath. My hair had been growing almost unhindered since taking my vows, save for an uneven line where I made sure to cut my bangs, to keep them from creeping out under the veil and making my forehead itchy. All in all, I was a sad little creature. Sheba, I was not. With a weary sigh, I stepped into the tub. I didn't know she would be insecure about her appearance, despite having lived inside a closed cell for years, with no one to ever look at her. Or maybe it's precisely because she doesn't have interactions with the outside world much that she is oddly insecure about it. I'm not sure. The warmth was quite unlike anything I've ever felt. As I lowered myself into the water completely, I could feel my muscles relaxing, a tingling sensation all over, as if the stress of the day was being washed away along with the dirt. Unfortunately, this relaxing effect didn't extend to my head. Ever since the superior had knocked on my door, I had felt as if all my thoughts had to be squeezed through a narrow tube one at a time, and I had forgotten each word that made it out of my mouth by the time it was said. I was completely off balance. I even tried sinking my entire head beneath the water to see if it had the same cleansing effect on my mind. No such luck. Raising my head above the waterline again, I tried to organize my thoughts as slowly as they came. I had made a complete fool of myself in front of Katherine and Margaret. Well, in front of everyone, actually. I had made Moira and Darcy waste their time attending to me like servants. Oh no, wasting? No, they didn't. No wonder Darcy had made that crack about my liege. I don't think it's to be taken in a bad way, you know? Or maybe I'm just too optimistic about it. They were probably all fed up with me already. Oh goodness. But one of them was a killer. What did I care about any of that? This place was in complete shambles. Sisters taking the Lord's name in vain. Flagrant disrespect for the abbess. Skipping matins, no, in fact, disregard for the liturgy of the hours in full. A total lack of familiarity with basic concepts from scripture. Or the proper procedure for Benedictine monastic communities. And murder, that was top of the list. To hell with all of them. I dunked my head under the water again and exhaled as hard as I could, in a feeble attempt to expel the rage building inside me. It worked somewhat. A feeling of deep embarrassment replaced my anger. I leaned back and stared into the ceiling, ashamed. I tried to push every thought away, both guilt and anger, to try and enjoy the rest of my bath. It really was nice. I wouldn't mind it if someone brought the tub in here for me. Hehe. I might never get out. Say, while I have you here. Oh, she's talking to us again. I assume every time she's gonna hee at me, that's gonna be her from the future. Would you like to hear a different story? It's shorter than my own, don't worry. It won't be too much of a detour. Hehehe. Oh goodness. I'm sure you've heard it before, but it's one that I've been thinking about lately. It's a Bible story, of course. You, of course, know of Elijah and Elisha. Do I? I don't think I do. Elijah ascended to heaven, and Elisha inherited his father's spirit. The sphere of God, with which he was able to perform miracles, and so on and so forth. He could part waters like Moses, and heal blighted lands and rivers. But there's a passage describing a journey to Bethel that amuses me. You know what I'm speaking of, yes? Forsooth, Elisha went up from thence into Bethel. And when he went up by that way, little children went out of the city and scorned him and said, Go up, thou bald one, bald one. Go up, thou bald one. And when he had beheld, he saw them, and cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 bears went out of the forest, and rent 42 children of them. Oh goodness. Just because they called him bald, I assume the bear went to maul them? 42, does it mean 42 as in 42? Goodness. Soothly, Elisha went from thence into the hill of Carmel, and from thence he turned again to Samaria. Oh goodness! Oh, that was scary. 42 children torn apart by angry bears at the behest of Elisha. That's rather extreme, isn't it? It's funny. When I was locked in the cell the first time around, I never thought much about this part of the story. But it really is awful to think about, isn't it? Could you imagine being ripped to shreds by a wild beast just for calling a man bald? Only it mustn't be horrible, because God heard Elisha's curse and punished the rude little boys and girls justly. That's seriously making people think about religion. I've read that a lot of people question if they really were children. Perhaps in the original Hebrew, the word is a little broader. In Latin, it certainly says children, and we're taught that this text is inerrant. Which brings me to the part of the story that interests me so. The text is inherent, but the Bible as we know it is a translation. So surely there is room for some error. In fact, that version of the story I recited for you, that wasn't just me paraphrasing from the Vulgate for you. That was a passage translated by a man named John Wycliffe. No, of course I know you know who Wycliffe is. Wycliffe? Who does not? Me, apparently. Please continue to humor me. I am attempting to record everything I find relevant to this story. Imagine, perish the thought, that you were some heathen listening to my tale. You'd appreciate the explanation, would you not? That is how I was trained to write chronicles. Do try and put up with me if I sound like the superior. Anyway, as written in Latin, the story is as follows. Ascendit autumn in battle, and etc., etc., etc. And so on and so forth. Many years ago, Wycliffe translated the Bible into English. The archbishop at the time accused him of inserting nefarious messages into his translations. He thought Wycliffe was trying to rile the common people up to rebel against the church, or rebel against the church. So sure they were of Wycliffe's hearsay that they held a synod to argue for his expulsion from Oxford. They succeeded too. His Majesty Richard II banished him from the college, and it became actual written law that no man shall write against the church. Oh, wow, that's interesting. The church, especially in medieval times, has so much power over the people. And I'm pretty sure for the monarchy, the royal family, to have power over the people, they also need to side with the church, or possibly bribe the church. I do believe so. We both know the rest, of course. But you won't bite my head off for walking through it, will you? The Wycliffeites were denounced. Their hearsay was thoroughly put to rest. This was nearly a century ago, so God forgive me for saying this. Wycliffe had some interesting things to say about translation that often rattle around in my head. But I've gotten very sidetracked here, haven't I? Oh dear. The point is, I find it interesting that Wycliffe's translation kept the children part from the Vulgate Bible. He too must have felt the original Latin text was inerrant, and yet he was punished for his translation work. God forbid, but if the church as we know it crumbles many years from now, someone attempts to teach using his Bible as a basis, will they keep that part like we keep it in the Vulgate? What does this story actually mean? It certainly seems a bit cruel. Maybe it means nothing. If it means nothing, is it necessary? If it is necessary, what does it mean? You must forgive me. I do sound a bit of a lollard at the moment, don't I? It is a rather impossible problem. The 42 children may have been mauled by bears at least 3 times now. Probably many times, as I doubt Wycliffe is the only man who tried to write a Bible in his own language. And since I'm afraid I'm useless at Hebrew, I'll never know if they were meant to be at all. I suppose this is splitting hairs. If they were grown men and women, being attacked by a furious mother bear commanded by God's messenger is still a rather unpleasant way to go. Still, clawed to death for a playground taunt. What a strange world. It truly is strange indeed. Ah, so you had indeed already heard all this before. Please forgive me for taking up more of your precious time. Like I said before, you'll permit me a small indulgence here and there. Okay, I think I'll end here for today. I thought I was gonna get jump scared by another 42 skulls looking at me. Today we met a lot of the other sisters, and they all seem very fun. You can tell Katherine and Margaret are like a pair, and Darcy and Eustace are also another pair of friends. Darcy is a very fun character. I think I will enjoy seeing her presence more. Hopefully so. I think she would keep the atmosphere lighthearted. Katherine also is a bit on the lighthearted side, I guess. But you can tell Katherine and Angela has something kind of going on between them. Moira, I know I'm suspicious of her because she seemed a bit too nice and she was bawling like crazy in Catherine with a C's room. But, you know, it could be genuine tears, it could be other things. The other thing of interest was that the faucet in the kitchen is broken, so surely it has some meaning to it, right? Why would they not mention it if there is no meaning to it? That's just generally where my train of thoughts is right now. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!